Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about The Queen by Nick Cutter. It is a bug horror. I don't really feel like I can call it horror because it is just so ridiculous, but it does try to be horror with its descriptions. You let me know if you've read any of Nick Cutter's books, if you've read this book, and how do you classify horror? Because I don't really there's no sense of dread or anything in this. It is, and maybe that's just because it feels so controlled, which is what I'm going to say at the top of this is one, I didn't enjoy this book if that's not obvious, but two, it when you're reading a book that is theoretically, especially I want to say in horror or even romance, but when you're reading horror and it is so obvious that the author's fingers are all over what is happening and they are specifically trying to show you to gross you out, it comes across that way, and it doesn't come across as horror because it is so controlled. It's like somebody coming at you with a box of they know their poop is in the box and they just want to get a nasty reaction out of you. So they open the box so that you go, ugh, and they go, haha, I am the best at horror because look at how you recoiled from me. And then they throw it at you and they're like, you see, I got you to scream, which means I am the best. But anyway, it's just a way of saying that when you're reading a story and there's no honesty with the characters, it's not authentic to the characters because it is so controlled by the author's hands, doing this with the characters. For me, that makes there be no stakes because the entire thing is so orchestrated by the author, by the writer, that these are just dolls. These are just tools in order to elicit a reaction out of you, as opposed to telling a story that is honest to those characters. And I know that this description may not make sense to some people. I don't think that all writers go into writing a story to do the same thing or with the same intentions. I've done videos on it in the past, but also had conversations with people that are like, well, that's a character. It is a tool to do a thing. Some writers, some creators in general, because you can see it with video games and whatnot, do make characters to be a tool. In other circumstances with other people like me, I'm telling a story of these characters as they kind of, for lack of better terms, I don't think I'm being psychic or anything, but the characters are telling their stories through my fingers. I don't necessarily have control over it. They happen however they happen, and I'm just kind of transcribing what happens. But there is a different level of control of the characters and of the stories, and for me it comes down to what's the character introduced as, what's their personality, their circumstances, what are things like. And in this book especially, it takes a lot of it takes a lot of time away from the actual action of the story in order to do random asides just to be gross, and you'll see what I mean as we go through the story. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Leigh, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and in the first video of the month, we bask in your creativity, share your creativity, and if you've got places you want to send people to, I share them as I can in the description. Hopefully, it's just a fun exercise that kind of gets your brain going without having any stakes at all, so you can just explore. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, that chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work. And a third way is my new series, Crit This, where if you have something that you would like feedback on, follow the link to Crit This and you can submit stuff, and even longer stuff if you would like feedback on a longer story. Just follow the instructions. There's also a submit stuff for me to read if you have a book that you would like me to read, whether it is your own or something you would just like my reaction on. That is also down there. The third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books. And The Legend of Bill Cassidy, book 1, will definitely be coming out next year. I'm getting so close to the ending of it at this point for revision, and looking forward to the editing phase. It's already on Goodreads if you want to, favorite it for later for when there's more information. And I'm looking so forward to the book covers because the ideas for them, mwah, mwah. You'll get a lovely picture of each of the Cassidys on each of the covers. It's going to be great. With that said, let's get into the opening comments. This is exactly the kind of book and writer that I really can't stand reading, where it's writing for the gross out and the characters slash situations and everything else are just tools to elicit a reaction from the reader. There is nothing deeper here, and it's trying way too hard, but that's all that I can say before getting into the business. Also, I'm sure that other people who are Nick Cutter fans, because clearly Nick Cutter does have fans, can find something deeper about his work, but I felt like it was way too controlled and just trying to be gross, that nothing else that it tried to do was going to stand out, because the social commentary really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. This is just a bug story, a horror story, and like not every story has to have any bigger, deeper meaning, especially stuff when it's like horror or erotica, like you're there for a very specific reason. And I think that Nick Cutter does probably a good job for the people who are looking for the brand of writing that he does. But if it's not your thing, then I just think that it's going to be pointless to you. This book was submitted to me to read by the Suggest Reads to Me thing that I have on my link tree that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for it. I'm more cultured. I can now say that I know I shouldn't read Nick Cutter in the future. With that said, let's get into the first page for vibes. This is the prologue. Quote, "It's impossible to know another person, isn't it? To step past that locked door of their secretive inner self. Sure, you might suspect that you can, even broadcast that suspicion to the world. My best friend and I are so tight that we finish each other's sentences. But honestly, do you even want to know? What if a science found a way? What if you could hear the running hum of your closest friend's thoughts? What if you find out that she lusts to skin you alive, harvesting Kleenex-sized sheets of flesh to consume like fruit roll-ups? But I bet that it would be a dabber truth. You'd find out that she doesn't hold any special space in her heart for you, the one that you hold for her. If that's what's in her head, it's better off not knowing, right? Better to stay conned. My voice is a dusty croak. Have I been talking to myself again? You got to pull yourself together, Meadow. You'll never get into college acting like this." Tony Soprano's sitting in the darkened office, whose door faces the basin sink that I'm slumped up against, kicked back with his shoes on the desk, legs crossed, and a pair of khaki slacks, mustard yellow bowling shirt, puffing on the Monte Cristo cigar. Tony tisks, "You're about as goofy as a bedbug, Med. Smarten up, daughter of mine." First, I want to say that I would never want to actually have the ability to read anybody's thoughts, even like people that I love and care about, particularly because I would like them to have a sense of privacy and a sense of trust. Like, what are you telling your friends and family or the people that you love when you say that you can't trust them so much that you want to be able to read their thoughts? I also don't think that anybody needs to have access to 24/7 all of somebody's thoughts, because you know what? They're not always in their right mind. I know I'm not always thinking in my right mind, and it's okay to have some things private. I really don't personally understand this need that some people have to like get into literally somebody's everything and to act like it's somehow healthy to want to know like literally every little tiny thing that somebody thinks or does or says. Like, I don't know. Anyway, this introduction makes up the main character, Meadow, and her imaginary version of Tony Soprano running around a restaurant slash bistro slash building of some kind to avoid the killer wasps that are killing other people. It has a bunch of body horror style descriptions of murder, but that's about it. Plus 2 mentions of testicular torture, and it ends with, "Wow, what a day," flashback time, which I think doing that as an intro to a horror book weakens the tension because you start out by showing the building action, but that's just me. So what I often see with stuff like this when it's being used at the start of a book for a prologue is that the writer doesn't have a lot of confidence in the opening of the book, so they want to open up with the action that is going to take place later to then flashback to before all of the action started so that you can see kind of a climax that's happening all the way at the beginning because it is high action. And I know that a lot of horror movies and horror stories in general kind of show the bad that is happening or kind of the creeping of something nasty that is happening or going to be happening later. And that is a legit trope and a legit way to write a story. But I also think that usually for those being successful, it is not what the main character is experiencing, showing that exact thing. Also, when this is going to be literally your your climax in your book, because this is the climax of the book. We're going to get like 60% of the way through the book. And that's going to be probably 30% of the book once we get there. And it is just her being in a country club kitchen while wasps are attacking all of the people. And so if you open your novel with the climax, what are you freaking bringing to the readers later in the story for 30% of the book? I think that it is a bad move, and it does burst the tension. You can't build up to anything because you've already just spent this entire time with gross out of the bugs attack. So like, but that's just me. Let me know your thoughts on how to effectively use prologues. I think it would have just been better for this book to skip all of that and go straight to chapter 1, because you would have had more suspense. So chapter 1 seems like a dream, and the main character is wandering around a graveyard with a phone ringing from somewhere. This turns out to lead to a couple of boys from her school who are missing. They're all popular kids, and they've all been missing for a couple of weeks, and they're crawling out of this grave, and there is a long description of body horror. Quote, "They were crawling from their coffins, which had coughed their corpses out like half-chewed morsels of food. Their funeral suits, the kind that zipped up from their ass cracks in the style of toddler jammies, hung off their carcasses in worm-eaten tatters. Their bodies were deflated pods. Their heads were flat and flounderish, their skulls spread into thick pancakes. Some unguessable pressure had drawn their features together. Eyes and nose and mouth pinched into a knot and shoved back on the wadded flesh of their foreheads. Their eyes, those dead, festering eyes, stared mindlessly from their hairlines. They still had that, though. Hair, thick, curly, and wavy. Oh, yes, they did. The missing boys issued gluttonous noises as they sucked out of the earth, not so much climbing as sidewinding in the manner of millipedes. But that didn't mean that they were incapable of sound. They emitted a hiss of compressed air from a beach ball, which made my skin creep helplessly across my hip bone. The dead boys taunt her to answer her phone as they crawl toward the narrator, whispering that she's going to lose her mind. The narrator then wakes up and wanders out of bed unbalanced, knocking over books and her drafted short story. She keeps checking her phone to see new texts telling her to go downstairs. She doesn't know who is texting her this because it's an unknown number. She gets downstairs, opens the front door, and there is a package dropped off for somebody named Cherry. The only person who ever called her Cherry was her friend Plum, who is dead, presumably dead, who has been missing for a couple of months. I think actually for a month. I think it's only been a month. I think the missing boys have only been missing for like a week or two, and then Plum has been missing for a month because the narrator has become a shut-in, stopped going to school after her friend went missing. She opens the box and finds a brand new iPhone inside. She turns it on, and the backdrop is her and her dead friend, and also a text saying, "How's it going, Chair?" And she is losing her mind about who is sending this, what is happening, while reminiscing on when her friend went missing that month ago. She randomly thinks about how her and Plum pretended to do each other's funerals as kids, because kids, creepy, dead things, it's all just for the vibes. It's not for anything other than the vibes. And she's like, we were weird for that. She goes over how there was no way her friend is back from the dead, and even though they've not found a body since she's been gone a month, they're like, she's probably dead, right? She has no idea how her friend could even be texting her right now, but no one cared about Plum because she was poor, and when poor people go missing, it goes cold, and no one cares. There's a lot of stuff that goes into cold cases, and what do you do when you've still got stuff piling up and you've got a cold case where there's nowhere to go with it? It's a complicated thing, and I don't want to get into the political discussion behind it. Meanwhile, Margaret/Cherry's family got rich off of her dad selling one patent, and now she lives in a McMansion. So the two of them used to be neighbors in a trailer park until her father sold a cookie tray as a patent that all cookie companies like Nabisco and Toll House and whatever put their cookies in while traveling so that the cookies wouldn't crumble. And this is in modern day. She's got an iPhone that takes great pictures, great movies, receives videos. And so we're supposed to believe that this cookie tray, this stupid cookie tray, is patented by his family all of a sudden when we've got like decades of making and selling cookies and transporting cookies. It's just a low effort way to make her rich. And I don't know why this was the choice. It's so dumb that it just makes you go, and the fact that it is stupid and not stupid in like a horror way makes you again question if this is horror, because it doesn't meet the horror vibes. If you're wondering if this is all just mostly exposition between her picking up the phone and then going out the door following the orders of the stranger on the phone that she doesn't know or trust, then yes, that's exactly what it is. You know, she could have even stepped out the door and then been shot when the door opens or kidnapped or something. And she's like not even worried about it when she's getting this unknown number saying, hey, come check outside. She leaves the house and comments on how she hasn't left the house in forever, which just makes you ask why. And we'll later find out it's because as soon as her friend went missing, she kind of just became a recluse. But it feels more like lazy writing and putting this character in a void of not existing until the story starts, rather than being a character choice, because she lives with her parents. She's a teenager, so she isn't going to school. She isn't working. Why hasn't she left the house in forever? Has her family checked on her? Has her mother checked on her at least? Or are they off on a yacht club somewhere? Or are they off on a yacht somewhere as they are McRich? Because we just have this character that more or less stopped existing, and there's nothing to it. Like, there are things that would happen even if she was at home. She'd be seeing a therapist. Maybe her parents would be making her see a therapist. Maybe she'd be getting in trouble. Maybe her parents really don't care because she's 18. And so it's like, YOLO, you can drop out if you want. We don't know. But so then her parents are not like, hey, you should be doing something productive somewhere, or we're worried about you since your best friend since childhood disappeared, or, you know, good riddance to that. And then she can have a reaction to her parents dissing on her childhood friend because she was poor, and like, there's just nothing. It's just she stopped existing up until the beginning of this story. Or she, in general, didn't exist. Margaret then receives a Google ping for news regarding 5 missing teens. 3 of them were guys that were friends that she and Plum knew from school, and they were all jerks anyway. They've been missing for 2 weeks now, and the news update says that they have been missing for 2 weeks. She now believes that the person on the phone might be Plum because that person knew about the fake funeral thing that she was just reminiscing about previously. A teenage boy who Margaret doesn't hate, named Harry Cook, shows up on a motorcycle and questions why Margaret is following this stranger on the phone because it seems like a really stupid and kind of dangerous idea. It turns out that Harry had also received messages from an unknown number telling him to come and see Margaret. So he's questioning her doing something stupid while also doing the literal exact same thing. The unknown number on the phone sends a video that is Plum's voice to kind of further prove that it is Plum talking to her. Quote, I stared at the file, open-mouthed, tapped to play. I shared a look with Harry. His expression said, hey, you do you, Maggie. I thumb-tapped the icon. Chair. Hey, listen. I'm so sorry. I've missed you so much. There was a frayed edge to Plum's voice, but it was unmistakably her. Hey, Hare. Thanks for coming too. There's a huge, crazy story still to be told, okay? It took me a long time to come to grips with, but I've reached what Buddha calls the second noble truth. My heart was jackhammering. Sweat was just dumping out of me. Chair, you know I'd never hurt you, right? And whatever went down that night at Burning Van, you know, with those boys, we weren't in the best place when we last spoke. Anyway, this story I'm part of, that I've been part of for a long time, it turns out that you need to understand. To do that, you've got to see some things today. It's like Mr. F told us in English class. Show, don't tell. You with me? You come along too, Harry. It'll be good to have a second set of eyes, and please, don't tell anyone. I'm dead serious. You have to keep this to yourself for right now. Trust me, please? Okay? When the file cut out, Harry shot off the bench, stabbing his hands through his hair. She's Hannah Bakering us! He spun behind the bench, Leo Zalter's mustache forming a furry girdle on his hips. 13 Reasons Why. Remember? Charity's just updating things. A phone instead of cassettes. Harry is like, we better not listen to whatever noise this is because it's clearly dangerous and it's a setup and it's manipulating us. And Margaret takes the phone back, begging for answers from it. It tells them that they need to go to school. On the back of Harry's motorcycle, Margaret's asking herself why Plum would fake a suicide while also saying how fucking baller it is. Of course she's asking herself and imagining Plum's answer, having a whole conversation in her head on how to justify this fake suicide because she thinks her friend is so cool for it. Harry asks Margaret why she's never called him back when he's texted her a bunch of times, and she thinks about how she disappeared into her room with books after Burning Van went crazy and Plum disappeared. She doesn't answer Harry though, despite thinking all of this in her head, and he doesn't push for answers. So why'd he even ask? It doesn't matter. It was just a prompt in order to tell the reader something. but not a genuine character interaction. They get to his house, and Margaret details his stunt yard that's set up so he can do like jackass style videos for YouTube in order to make money. This is also where she details that her dad made a bunch of money off of selling cookie sheets or patenting cookie sheets. And then Harry grabs his keys for the car because they came back to switch from his motorcycle to his car to then get to school. Now we've switched to a random introduction of this guy named Rudyard Crate, who is in the middle of nowhere with his dad and older sister during an excavation. Rudyard at this point is 10 years old, his older sister is 16 years old, and they are only there at the excavation for his father. Some weird vibes are going on with incest feelings towards his sister, which is fairly common in books like this because it's like, ew, incest. It takes me back to Stigma Play that also tried to do this, where it just inserts whatever it thinks is disgusting in order to elicit a response. And it's also one of the ways that I think it is the lowest form of creating horror, is just to try to elicit a response rather than telling a story that is genuinely horrible because you're watching just these horrible things go on that there is no control over to them. It's just try hard. It's like, think of the worst things that you can. Oh, zoo sadism? Yeah, that is disgusting. But reaching for zoo sadism and raping an infant is just bad writing. It's just cheap writing. The same way that many writers use rape as a shortcut to either character development or isn't this person horrible. Same with pedophilia. Like, you can write all of those things into a story and make it good, but a bunch of writers that don't have too many skills, no shade, jump on those things to try to either rush to sympathy or rush to evil. And it's just like, it doesn't mean anything. The dad drills so hard into the ground that he drills into an anthill with giant, like, fire ants of a sort and frees this disastrous wave of ants that is so comedically big, it's basically like a wash of water of the ants just like whoosh over everything, and they flip the car that Rudy and his sister are in and are biting him the second that they get on his skin. His sister's hand and feet are chewed down to nubs just instantly by these things, and the ants crawl into her mouth next, and it's just describing her being consumed by bugs. This whole chapter is just a long description of death and gore as the ants eat his sister, and they start eating Rudy second because they can't fight this number of ants. It feels like it's just trying to be shocking. Then we skip forward a couple of decades, and he's somehow lived past that death scene. It doesn't say how he escaped. It just insinuated that he was being attacked by the ants, that he thought he was going to die, and then now, when he is 56, he is not dead. Don't worry, though, it doesn't explain anything. It never really returns to that scene. The only point of that scene was, one, the fire ants, and two, his sexual feelings towards his sister while he was 10 years old. Now, as a 56-year-old, he owns a super big company that does something it doesn't really say, but his dad owned a big company and lots of money as well, so who freaking knows if he just inherited that when his dad died? I don't know. Rudy is appearing in this area where Margaret theoretically lives in a helicopter. He is talking to his two henchmen about what is supposed to go down today and how they all might die. It could, though he's like, we could cheat death again, but their surveillance subject and the bestie are probably going to be doomed. We can only assume that those two people are Margaret and Plum, and Plum's actual name is Charity. And if you're wondering where the names Cherry and Plum came from, because that's what the two girls' nicknames are, it's from the street that they lived on when they lived, near each other as neighbors. I also don't really understand the choice of making Margaret's name Cherry and then to shorten it to Chair, because you've already got a nickname and you're making a nickname for a nickname. But now you've got Charity and Cherry, and you've got Chair and Chair. And then you're going to get Hair, because Harry is also going to get shortened to Hair when Harry doesn't even need a nickname. Usually Harry is also a nickname itself, but I don't know why everything is a nickname. As you do with these kinds of books, it brings up definitely at the age of 10, he had a burgeoning sexual feeling for his older sister that he didn't really understand. And sometimes he thinks about her, frozen at 16, getting consumed by ants because that's when she died. And it's kind of just a Russian roulette of which part of her he remembers when he's thinking about her as he janks it. At this moment, when he is 50 and a half, he has discovered what his life purpose is, and he's crazy. Quote, in that crashing moment so long ago, Rudyard Crate had discovered his life's purpose. He was intelligent enough to realize it was wrong. Also clear-sighted enough to see that his experience had left him with significant mental instability. Hell, he may even be full-on demented. But who gave a ripe shit? I hate the crassness of this kind of writing. It really doesn't care about what it's doing. It takes me back to You Better Watch Out and stories that choose, look, he's crazy, just to be sensational. The story knows that it doesn't make sense, and it knows that there is no effort put into it, so rather than actually making an effort into the story, the author addresses it with, it's meaningless, and it doesn't matter, who gives a shit, I got paid, yo. Have I told you the time that I left a review on a book and the author saying that I didn't like it? And the author responded, doesn't matter, I still got your money, fuck you. And I'm like, what? That's what this feels like. It's so arrogant and it's disgusting. But, you know, no less disgusting than people sensationalizing real serial killers to make money and doing fanfic of real serial killers to make money and cradling the balls of real serial killers to make money. It's just... You're going to pick something, I know that you're going to pick something sensitive in order to, and like outlandish to make your horror book on, but like, can we put a little bit of effort into this other than I want to fuck my sister and a giant bug because I'm crazy, but who gives a shit? I'm a megalomaniac, rich guy, crazy guy. That's like most of us, right? Just try and stop me. This perspective isn't even needed for this story. Like, the Rudyard perspective isn't even needed. Just keep it in freaking Margaret's perspective the entire time and maintain a sense of tension and mystery as to what is going on in her life rather than immediately going over here before the stuff even starts to explain who this crazy guy is and how he wants to fuck a bug. But hey, whatever. This perspective just exists so the author can break, so the writer can break the fourth wall by saying he's rich so he can get away with whatever he wants. And people will put up with anything that rich people do so long as the check can get cashed. It's almost like there's running commentary here that's not subtle at all that rich people suck. Now there's more exposition about how Margaret and Plum are playing a game called Tell Me, where they just say, tell me something, and Margaret says that she doesn't want people to know that she's not well put together. But she's like 15 in this flashback, so like, it always blows my mind how young people think that they need to have it all together and to be successful and to like be on a track. I don't know. There's a lot of pressure in general on people, and it's just like, you're 15, you're 20, you don't gotta have it together yet. It's okay, but don't take it from me. I'm not much of a life coach. Enjoy your life, okay? Plum says that she doesn't feel like she's part of anything and just exists, and she doesn't want people to know that's how she feels. Margaret thinks about this and how weird Plum was, but she just got used to it. So Plum always stood out at school because she had behavior that kind of was abnormal, considered abnormal, and didn't really fit in with the others, but she still got on. She says that as they grew older, she fell away from Plum and noticed that her friends also leaned away and wanted less to do with her, and that moving out of that neighborhood they both lived in basically helped end their friendship, that Margaret wanted to end anyway because she had started seeing Plum for being odd and didn't want any part of it anymore. And she was actually grateful to move away and have it end kind of naturally on its own. She also feels a little bad about not being truthful with Plum about, you know, the end of the relationship. Personally, there are more reasons in which she could have, preferred the ending of that relationship. And in part, it's Plum sort of making sexual passes at her when she didn't want it. And also, not only that, but trying to mind control her into having sex with her. We'll get into that a little bit later, but Plum developed mind control and then tried to coerce her friend into having sex with her. And her friend was like, I'm not really into this. And she's like, yes, you are, trying to get her to have sex with her. And, I think that coercion is a good reason to maybe not be alone with somebody. I don't care if it's mind control or manipulation or what, or the sex or gender of the person doing it to you. But if your friend is trying to coerce you into doing something that you've said no to, especially intimacy like that, especially coming into the shower when you are in the shower naked by yourself, and that's not normal girl behavior. I should inform male writers everywhere. Girls don't just take showers with each other at their houses. Maybe that's a good reason to end a friendship, because you've now made it uncomfortable and maybe mildly scary to be in the same place as you because of the coercion that you have done. But I digress. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. Harry and Margaret then get to the school, run into custodian who asks what these sussy kids are up to. Harry says that he might die today, but not here. So Also, I should say on this note, this entire book takes place in one day. So as they reference like the day, just know that it is all one book. It is all one day that this is going down. Following the phone's orders at the school, they go inside after a brief smoke of some pot. In the school, Margaret notices the banners for the Missing Rich Boys campaign, but charity isn't mentioned at all. At some point, Margaret sees what she calls Bad Harry, which basically turns him into Two-Face, where half of his face is bad and scary and the other half is regular Harry. She says that he has two parts of his personality, which, you know, everybody has kind of their asshole side and their normal side. It's not really that amazing. That, I don't know, people are more complicated, more complex than just being a single facet thing. Sometimes I'm going to say that there are some people that are really like not multifaceted at all, but that's a different thing. And when it comes to Bad Harry, she says that it's the poison side that tries to take over the rest of him, certainly. I don't know why this was specifically necessary, because Good Harry and Bad Harry don't really turn into anything, don't really mean anything, and Harry could have just been Harry the entire time. There's, like, no reason for it. She looks at him and says she doesn't need Bad Harry right now in these circumstances, and Harry is like, okay, I'll try to suppress him, but the circumstances mean that Bad Harry will constantly be around today. My notes here say, what the frick is this? And what's it have to do with anything? It's just so random in a bad way. They decide to comfort themselves, saying that nothing truly bad can happen because they're in school full of people, and it's not like it's the woods at midnight, which is pretty much as much a red flag as when a book goes, this character is so happy, they were having such a great time, they were saving themselves, and they were so pure, and blah, 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 right before something bad really happens. As commanded by their cell phones, they go to the school pool and are led to a door that Margaret doesn't remember ever being there in the pool room. It's unlocked and they go inside. Two staircases lead to areas that she has never been to. They end up entering a boiler room and receive another file from Plum that includes, quote, I can't remember when this new person crept into me, but I think loneliness put her there. The kind that twists you out of shape, making you a sad, mangled version of who you'd been. People didn't like to be around that version, even the ones that I know loved me. The old me understands why that is. I'm no fun anymore. I'm a glowing plutonium rod. Stay close to me long enough and you'll get sick. It's generally a long rant about how she's someone who no one wants to talk to and everyone abandoned her for who she became, and she dreamed more about being abandoned as time went on. And in this rant, we get this contradictory statement, quote, all I'd ever wanted was to be myself without feeling ashamed or stupid. I wanted to be anyone else other than who I was. But who is that? Which comes off as trying too hard to be deep. It doesn't make sense and it contradicts itself because it doesn't have any actual character behind it. It's about what it's attempting to say or an attempt to make you feel by using Plum as a tool. Now, the two of them see a stained, dented mattress behind the furnace. They see a camera, and Margaret tries to text Plum to ask if they're being watched. There's no communication down there. They're too far underground to receive text messages. You're just in the boiler room at school, but okay, maybe. Maybe you've got lead in the walls. The mattress is stained with chunks, and it's been obvious that it's blood since the very beginning of them getting in this room, but she's only noticing. The two of them get sick, leave the furnace room, and talk about telling someone about what they found. Plum begs them not to tell anyone, and they're both sure that this is too big for them to carry on their own. Harry goes outside for some air, and Margaret thinks about telling someone, but then thinks of when she was younger and she saw her parents having drunken sex for the first time, and she relates the smell of her parents having sex to the same smell that was in the furnace room. And again, we return to the children relating sex to their parents thing that constantly comes up in these types of books as well. It's horror and erotica that constantly relate having sex with parents. And I know it's been a while since we've talked about this, but that's because it's been a while since we've read one of these books. Outside, the two of them get high, and Harry talks about his dad being an Iraq vet with problems, and he's better at hiding those problems than Harry. And now Margaret is angsting about her experiences that turn into baggage that you carry into adulthood, and how it's that kills you. But they just call it anal cancer. So she doesn't really believe that there are any physical ailments, or she's reasoning with herself mentally that there are no physical ailments. It's just carrying memories, bad memories that turn into baggage from life that end up killing you. And the doctor just labels it anal cancer because, of course, of all of the cancers, it has to be anal because that's where poop comes from. Though in this sort of thing, it just makes it, again, less scary. It's just freaking What are you, 5? I'm sorry. Told to go to English class by the text messages, Margaret thinks about how she applied for university because her teacher urged her to, since she is such a great writer, and she also did so secretly and kept it from everyone but the teacher who encouraged her. Thinking about things makes her sober up very quickly, and now she is in class. So the teacher in class is either drunk or high and checked out of everything. Eventually, he goes on a long rant about how he assaulted a student and had an inappropriate relationship with her, and then he runs out of the room. Students captured the entire rant on their phones. Also, he went into the cabinet of their room to open it, and a giant pest of some kind fell onto him, and that's why he ran out of the room. Not because of his own accord or he was done with his rant, but because he opened the supply cabinet, a bug fell on him, and then he ran out screaming. Margaret is going to break open the cabinet, but when she's not sure if she should touch it, she stops. She asks who Serena is, because that's the girl that the teacher said he had assaulted, and she never met a girl named Serena, but no one answers her outside of mocking her, so she leaves the room. Margaret gets mad at Harry for getting her high, though it was entirely her choice to take the blunt and to smoke outside with him. She goes to the office to report the situation with the teacher, and the admin there doesn't know who the student is and thinks that there is no one named Serena but for the drama teacher. Going through the student files, she finds a handwritten student file with only Serena written on it by the teacher who assaulted her. She asks for everyone who is in that teacher's class to come to the office for now, and that teacher has fled the school. His car is gone from the parking lot. Immediately then after, in the cafeteria, though I thought they were all going to be in the office, but yeah, everything in here doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Margaret is now asking people if they knew this girl named Serena. She's just asking random people, even taking it to a stage to I think it's just a stage in the room, because it's not like a cafeteria only. I don't know. I was homeschooled, so I don't know what normal cafeterias necessarily look like, or if there is a stage in some of them. She switches to lecturing everybody about not caring that Charity went missing, but everyone else got all of this stuff up around the school about these missing 3 popular boys. Random popular girl Miranda claims that Margaret never cared about her friend, and it shows because she disappeared into her house and nobody had seen her for a month after Plum disappeared. Margaret gets pissed off at this accusation and says, who even cares about these missing boys? Maybe they're all dead anyway, so what do we freaking care? Now you've got this flip-flop with Margaret where she says she's glad that relationship ended with Charity when she got moved away because she didn't really want to be friends with her anymore, but here she is being hey, you all are terrible people. And hey, maybe she's coping because she feels personally responsible for having ditched Plum, and Plum got into these bad situations because she was desperately lonely because nobody would be friends with her, and that's why she disappeared. But we also never have Margaret kind of confronting any of this. It's just kind of tossed out there at this point, and we flip-flop between her saying, I'm glad I wasn't Plum's friend anymore, but also none of you people cared about this. She could be aligning herself with the rich people that don't care about anybody who is poorer, but she's also somehow trying to elevate herself above other people, and that could be intentional or it could be unintentional. This chapter also contains a number of random asides that don't really matter, that are just there for the reaction, including one mention of this new girl that started coming to school, made friends with one of the most popular girls in school very easily because she was very charismatic. The other popular girls got jealous of the relationship that she started and began pushing rumors that this chick had sex with dogs, and eventually this girl killed herself before her family moved away. It just feels like it's trying so hard that I roll my eyes every time it makes an aside and something like this comes up in order to get a reaction out of you as a reader. A food fight breaks out and it turns into aggressive accusations of defending a predator, i.e. the teacher that assaulted Serena, and both Harry and Margaret flee the scene in a massive, uncomfortable fear that they're about to get jumped on by everybody else in the school for defending a predator. Driving away, Margaret gets a message on her phone telling her that she is going the wrong way and to turn around. The phone calls and it's revealed to be the girl named Serena on the other line, threatening her that she is the one with Charity tied to a chair, and if Margaret doesn't listen to her, she's going to torture Charity and it'll all be her fault. She says her and Charity bonded over Margaret's betrayal of Charity, over her going to college and not saying anything about it. So these two had already stopped being friends because Margaret moved away. And then Margaret applied for college to go to a special college for writing and didn't tell Plum that she had applied for college. But they had already stopped being friends. And yet this is also being used on both Margaret's side and Charity's side to say that Margaret had continued to lie and alienate and punish Charity. But they weren't even friends anymore. So why would she tell her that she got into a college, let alone her telling anybody that she got into a college? I don't think she even told her parents that she had gotten into a college. She had just applied in secret, which, whatever, teenagers are emotional. So her getting pissed off about this and taking it personally can be fine for that. But they were already not friends. So she wasn't telling you anything. So it being a point of contention in this case doesn't make sense. You were already not talking. Meanwhile, Margaret's having a meltdown and screaming loose in the car when Harry grabs her and kisses her in the most bizarre interaction and then going, what? Is this not the time? So imagine this girl like screaming her head off and then the guy just like grabs her and makes out with her and then he's like, what? That's not the time? While there are onlookers in another car right next to them wooting on a peep show and being like, hey, take your shirt off next. And this is not supposed to be a comedy. It can't take itself seriously. She thinks about how she wishes Plum stayed missing and how with this new information she can recontextualize everything about their relationship, but just calls herself a garbage person. I don't know how this makes her a garbage person. She had already dropped away and hadn't wanted anything to do with Plum. And when Plum had, again, attempted, like, would you call it a sexual assault? I would call it a sexual assault, where she comes into the bathroom when she's in the shower, pushes her for sexual forwardness when she is not invited to do so. They don't have that relationship. She tells her no and she's like, yes, you want it, until like the second or third time she's like, no, I don't. And then she runs out crying. I think it makes sense to kind of fall away from that person, especially when you've already started falling away for interests and where you're going in life. And like, it sucks. Some relationships last a really long time despite differences, and sometimes they don't. But I do think that making a move on somebody like that is more than enough to put a damper on that person trusting you and wanting to spend time with you, because now they're going to associate all the time that they spend with you with, is that going to happen again? Are you going to try to do that again? Pushing boundaries has consequences. Of course, I don't expect Plum to be considerate of that because Plum is acting out selfishly, but Margaret is out here feeling like she's a garbage person for not wanting to be friends anymore with somebody who did that to her, let alone somebody who is now trying to punish her for not being her friend anymore. Again, teenagers struggle with reading emotions correctly. This is an 18-year-old, but still, or with processing emotions well, but you know, no judgment. But I was a teenager once, okay? I know it's hard to believe. Look at me, I'm made of stone. I mean that in like I'm old, okay? I don't mean that in like I never crack. I mean I'm old. Now we switch back over to, after all of this other stuff, we finally switch back to Rudyard, who is navel-gazing about his sister being dead to describe her more, and also his interest in her, while complaining that Margaret isn't at her house anymore because he's up to something. It's so stupid and so unnecessary. It just repeats the bloody death scene because he is obsessed with it. The book is obsessed with it. The book's full trick is just being disgusting. And he also goes into a bunker that he has in this random city. It's full of bugs and he is killing them in a frenzy while swearing. I'm sure that he is jizzing himself. The description of killing the bugs is just freaking over the top, unnecessary. It does nothing. It means nothing. Then it talks about his physical and mental rehabilitation after he got back from Africa and how fixated he was on ants when he saw them, because of how traumatic the experience was over there. He also says that because of what happened over in Africa with the ants, he started seeing bugs where they weren't before. My guess for any of this being written this way is because, I don't know, it's a horror book. Then there's a vague reference of his plan of engineering a monster, his god complex, and his being rich so he can get away with doing whatever he wants. It's all repeated information just to monologue how he's a bad guy because he's a bad guy. And this chapter makes the one in part 1 even more unnecessary and redundant and bizarrely placed, because there was no other reference to Rudyard in the first third of the book. This is part 2, by the way, because the book is split up into like part 1, part 2, part 3. And then there are more useless chapters with Rudyard following that to be weird and to name drop Project Athena, which doesn't mean anything, but it's his DNA mixing of bugs, which if he has such an issue with bugs, what the frick is he even doing? We'll find out later. The only theory that they have is that he wants to fuck a bug because he associates bugs killing his sister with his sexual awakening towards his sister. I don't know. it's just being weird and gross for the sake of it. That's all that it is doing. There's no actual analysis or leaning into looking at any of this, because I don't think that this book or the design of this book cares about any of that. It just cares about being weird, and it wants you to go like, ew, this guy wants to fuck a bug after he wanted to fuck his sister. Returning to Margaret, she's driving with Harry, feeling guilty for keeping college away from Plum and arguing with an inner voice that is Plum again in her head. They get to a random missing kid's house and how much Margaret hates him. The house is still a crime scene, and then she receives another file from Plum. The missing kid's name was Alan, and Alan was apparently the meanest of all of the popular kids because he was always on the cusp of being kicked out of the popular kids, so he felt like he needed to prove himself. Plum also says that Alan was the one who filmed what had happened to her at Burning Van and put it out into the world. Now, you should know that Plum is lying about everything that happened because she manipulated the guys in the burning van in the same way that she tried to manipulate Margaret. So when she says what happened to me, it's all things that she had told them to do. Yeah, she raped them. She controlled them with mind control and raped them and made them shoot her with a video and then spread it around, and then was claiming that they raped her in an attempt to control them more, though she already had control. Also, speaking of control, later we're going to learn that Plum has mind control over Harry, and my guess is the random grabbing her and kissing her in the car was actually Plum controlling Harry, because she is still obsessed with Margaret. She still wants to have sex with Margaret, and we're going to find out further and further how obsessed she is, because by the end of this story, spoiler alert, Bug Girl friggin' Plum has turned Margaret into basically her sex slave in her hive. So we're going to get there, but my guess is for the whole bizarro thing of Henry grabbing her to kiss her in that moment of freaking out, it was just freaking Plum being freaking Plum and doing what she do, which is forcing Margaret into sexual situations. So switching to Rudiger POV, just another vague talk about his experiments and bugs and bug pheromones and breeding, because of course you got to talk about bugs and sex and pheromones in a book like this, because it's a fetish. And the obsession with sex in these types of books is also, like, you can write spooky, you can write scary sex, you can write scary sexual scenes, you can write degenerates in these things, but it's the way that these books try to sensationalize is so tired. They act like everything is so sanitized that this is going to be scary in 2025 when they're acting like this is the freaking 1970s. And that's just my opinion. Returning to Margaret's POV, her and Harry run into Alan's house. Margaret is panicking. Harry isn't. Apparently not shaken by the murder or any of what's going on, because, like, there's also blood in his bed. There were bloody handcuffs attached to the bed that kind of insinuate Alan was raped. Harry comforts Margaret, and they come up with why they might be targeted in this situation, because maybe they both upset Plum, they upset the popular kids. Like, how did they get into this? What did they do? Then Harry gets a cell phone, and they look at the address that they had been texted multiple times. Returning to Rudyard's perspective, he receives a snuff film of his naked and tortured employee, while Rudyard's bug girl creation, whichever one is in that room, is calling him daddy as she eats him. The video came with a body from the video, and they examined that body that had been consumed a bit by the bug girl. More shock schlock is in this chapter. It's all to say his experimental subject is fertile because she made a baby bug thing that he calls an abortion, but he is so proud of it. It's just him admiring how monstrous his work is, and now he's going to the trailer park. So the whole thing about his stuff, because it also, obviously, the previous chapter with him was about bugs and pheromones and, you know, how ladybugs kill male bugs and implement eggs inside of them, and he's like, look, sexually mature bug girl queen. Now she's going to start going out there and wanting to impregnate more dudes, which is going to kill more dudes. That's smexy. Dude likes little girls and bugs. The address that Margaret and Harry got was actually for Plum's house, and once Harry and Margaret get there, they find a tape recorded from Plum's mom. She appears to be held captive and is monologuing to them about how she adopted Charity for money, and there was this weird rich guy who wanted behavioral reports sent to him about her as she got older, and don't go anywhere near the dark, like, at all, with Charity because she is dangerous and the dark is where she comes out. She is also hit so hard over the head by whoever is holding her captive that she starts laughing. More text messages come in, likely from the author himself, and it directs them to a trap door that is under a lazy boy in the same trailer. The two of them are like, no, I don't want to go down there. This is a bad idea. We were just warned not to go down there. Plum is probably down there. And then Plum also sends messages saying, look, I like you, so I'm not going to kill you if you come and see me. Just come on down and come and see me. Plus, even if I didn't like you, but I do, I really, really, really like you, like you. But even if I didn't, I also need you to stay alive so that you can write stories about me, because I need the story of what is happening to be told. So, character has plot armor, which again makes this less horror because it is so controlled. And what I kept feeling with this book is that Margaret was a vehicle. And I think I have this in my notes at the end of this book review, where I start saying how it feels like, when you're going to It's a Small World After All ride or something, and you're kind of going around and you're just in this vehicle to kind of see what's around you. Margaret is that. She's got zero reaction to what's happening around her. She's got zero autonomy herself, and everything is just there to be filtered through her perspective to show you what is happening. While she is completely safe, it is a keep your arms inside of the vehicle while it moves at all times in order to stay safe. And so as this character is told by the big bad of this book, who is the most dangerous thing in this book, that she will be safe because she is liked and that she needs to write the stories, where is the horror? Where is the dread? Where are the stakes? There aren't any, because this is just a ride for the writer to show you what he has created, or the poop in the box, basically. Now, after the two of them argue about not going in, Harry decides that he is going to climb in and she can stay up top. But she hears a noise in the trailer that scares her, and she ends up backing up and falling straight into the hole, so we end up there anyway, but with a twisted ankle and falling on her booty. Just so you know, the twisted ankle doesn't do anything, so even that mention is dumb, and it doesn't slow her down, it doesn't put a disadvantage, it's literally nothing. So when I say that there are no stakes, no reaction, no anything, it can describe these things, but it has literally zero effect on the story, so it makes no difference if it hadn't happened. That's what I'm talking about. She hears a faint, continuous pleading of, please, please, by Plum's mom in the basement darkness that is then followed. Eventually, Margaret finds Harry, and then they keep going forward in the darkness. They find some bloody, pussy clothing, then an ID card for one of the missing boys. How convenient. They then find Plum's mom nailed to a chair, legs spread apart, naked and torn apart as though something had grown inside of her and burst out of it. She's also headless, and there are a bunch of large wasps everywhere around. Margaret almost pisses herself in fear, but holds herself back because she's afraid of attracting the bugs. I don't think Fear P works that way, but okay. A bunch of the wasps are still on this dead woman's body, and they attack Margaret and Harry. The two of them run. Harry is stung, but then they run, and the wasps back off. They run into someone wearing a hazmat suit who helps them out. So this is the only point of contention for me, is whether or not whether it was Plum who used Harry to kiss her in the car or not. We really have no idea because there's not a whole lot of description in this, but that stinging of the bug could be the thing that actually transferred Plum's control into Harry, and it wasn't any sooner, but it could go either way, honestly, because that also could have been for show. Who freaking knows? Now, it's no surprise who the dudes in the suit are, because how else would you know to go to this trailer of this girl unless you were the baby bug daddy? It's Rudy and his henchman, Jameson, and there's some other person, and I think Roy maybe. And he stalls by telling them a story of a serial killer who captured a family, and the dad didn't take the chance that he had to stop the killer, saying, well, Margaret, you didn't take the chance that you had to stop us, so now get in the car and come with us. Because you could have taken the shot and you could have run, but now that shot is over and you belong to me. They also treat Harry's nasty sting wound in the car. Traveling with Rudy, there are more thinking stories about other people, and this book is just a book of anecdotes about the neighborhood, really, not anything else, because the characters don't matter all that much. And by that I mean there is no through line, there's no real storyline. It's just, again, to tell you about the memories of people that Margaret knows in order to drop something else that's meant to disturb you. Switching to Rudyard's perspective, he is just driving alongside the other cars because apparently Roy and Jameson have their own cars, and he's thinking about how doomed everyone is and that there's going to be no good outcome for them while he lies to them, while he also is daydreaming about being violent. And now he says that Charity is his subject number 6, and I have to assume she is the most recent because she is the one that he is chasing down. She seems to be the one that he is the most proud of, and it's dropping all of this, acting like it hasn't referenced subject 6 before, but also from keeping information from the reader, which, by the way, purposefully keeping information from the reader that your perspective character knows doesn't create suspense. It is just cheap. And it actually showing your reader what the stakes are and what the character knows creates more suspense because you're waiting for when the bomb will go off rather than being very elusive and thinking that your reader can't understand that you're dropping notes that there is a bomb in the freaking train station. Just FYI, I see this used a lot. It's cheap and it's just not good writing. Does that mean people won't enjoy it? No, you don't have to be a good writer to be an enjoyable writer. That's the thing. This also goes over long details of how the other subjects failed before her, just to describe more things to elicit a response. Only 1, 2, and 4, though, are mentioned because I guess it ran out of things to say. I don't know why we skipped 3 and 5. He also thinks that his sister, while she was dying, commanded him to bring her back to life. And all he thinks about is, you know what? There are only 2 ways that monsters come to be. They're either born or they're made. It's super deep. It's like, those are the only 2 ways in which things are made anyway, born or made. Like, is there a third option? So everybody, taking Charity's request, drive to the wine field where the burning van took place, the party, and also the event that created the burning van, which is a van that is just like wrapped around a tree. I don't know why it's still there when it's in an active wine yard that they do make wine at. Rudyard tells Margaret to go in alone. She needs to get into the van. Plum is waiting. Plum texts the same thing. She goes forward and can't stop thinking about the night of the burning van party where stuff went down with Plum. Margaret then talks about how wasted her and Plum were when they got to burning van that night before heading into this crazy party. So they pre-gamed and got just wasted, sloshed. And then they got to the party. There were so many people around and they got even more drunk, and they also got high on edibles, which I think they took for the first time. This is just an excuse from the writer to make stuff happen, which... She gets separated from Plum and recruits Harry. And this was only like a month ago. So are we still jumping back and forth between like, when did she move to the McMansion and stop being friends with Plum? When this event happened a month ago, but she said that she stopped being friends with Plum longer ago than that. She gets separated from Plum at the party and recruits Harry to help find her. The 2 of them end up having sex when they can't find Plum. She then takes Plan B the next morning to make sure that she's not pregnant, but also the story goes back to them being there the night of Burning Van. I know, we got this random insertion of, well, I took Plan B because he came in me and we didn't, whatever, and I wanted to make sure I didn't get why are we jumping around in the plot, in the timeline like this, just to go back to Burning Van and be like, and then we were looking for Plum, and then we found people all around the van, and Plum was inside, and she was having sex with like 3 dudes. But after it kind of cuts off there with, they found stuff happening at the van and they were looking inside and they finally saw it, it cuts off there. Margaret is approaching the van now in real time and is told to go inside by a text message. She receives another audio file from Plum, which details how she had sex with Chad and Will, 2 of the popular guys who are missing, and Alan just watched and recorded it, who is the one that was from the other house that they had gone to that had the bloody handcuffs there. Somehow she thought about what she wanted, and they did exactly that. And then she threatened them for money, saying that she would tell everyone they raped her if they didn't give her money, and she is proud of it. And she says, it worked because why wouldn't people believe me? I'd say because there was a whole crowd there that saw everything was consensual when you went in, but I mean, that you were beckoning the guys in there with you, one after another. I mean, there's also video of it, but I think it messes up her I'm gonna lie and tell everyone that it was rape when there is video evidence and there was also a crowd there watching it all go down. Not that you can't be raped in front of a crowd, but I'm saying the way that Plum acted in the moment doesn't come off as rape, and so I don't know how she would blackmail this. Because she's also like, you would be embarrassed to be seen having sex with me, but a bunch of people saw the popular guys having sex with the weirdo Plum, so I don't know. She also says that she saw Margaret watching from outside of the van that night, so she knows that her friend saw and didn't do anything. Literally, all she does in the van is listen to this audio file, and then she goes back out to the cars with a rich guy and his henchmen, thinking how Plum was the one to force those guys to have sex with her, not the other way around. Further proving that this book is just a tour of everything with Margaret as the vehicle because nothing is happening. Literally go in that van, listen to a video file, come back. Rudyard asks what Margaret saw when she was in the van, but she won't say at all. Aren't Margaret and Harry basically against their will? So how is he not getting answers that he wants? And he just lets it go. This Mr. Bad Guy, crazy guy doesn't even push for control or manipulation of this girl to get information on his test subject that is contacting Margaret specifically, who is friends with Margaret specifically, that he has been monitoring her interactions with other people. And now for some reason we're pretending that Margaret has a choice in her own captivity. Whatever. It's safety. It's the safety. Keep your legs in the vehicle. Rudyard doesn't do anything. Him and Margaret both receive a text message of a YouTube video. They get into his car and then drive away a couple of blocks to like park somewhere and watch the video together as was demanded of them. I don't really get why they had to drive away because nothing happened and they could have like sat in the car anyway where they were to watch the video in privacy. But they had to drive blocks away from the henchman and Harry to just sit there and watch a YouTube video. In the video, Plum is coming out of the van and she is glowing. There's a random memory of a day in 6th grade when Margaret started her period. Blood just filled her pants, and then Plum follows her into the bathroom and offers to trade pants and underwear. After putting them on, she walks home so that she can change clothes while Margaret goes back to class. It just wanted to describe a girl putting on bloody pants and underwear, and it did so in detail it didn't need to. And it also acted as if you wouldn't wash those things in the sink if you were already taking them off in the bathroom, and it literally was so fresh that, you know, are you gonna walk with bloody pants or wet pants? Like, it's just wanted to be gross again, and it just also feels like an ignorance towards women. Not that necessarily a young girl would know to just wash it off, but if you're gonna switch pants like that, like, why would you? Then in the video that they're watching, Plum comes out of the van, you know, with her glowing and all that. She comes out of the van chanting, "Gonna eat some skinny bitches," and everyone scatters after a time. Oh my gosh. She thinks of the morning after when she met Plum in the park and keeps saying that she was raped and they should report it, while Plum is saying that she was not raped. The video made her well known, and there is some rumors going around that Margaret is worried about will define Plum. I'm so smooth-brained about this that I don't know what it is or would be, to the point that her being like, we have to report this rape before it ruins your life. They all think that you're trash who took hush money, when there's also a video showing that it was consensual, and I don't know what this is really trying to do. They also already think that you were raped anyway, so like, took the hush money, but they saw the video and they think that you were raped anyway. So what is this video doing that is going to ruin your life? I mean, yeah, there are videos of like revenge porn that, regardless of the circumstances, consensual or not, it can end up ruining somebody's life because of the reaction in general. But this book doesn't explore any of what it is referencing and just feels like it is throwing things out there without discussing them. So you don't even know what's going on. It's just like, this is a bad thing that I'm going to reference, but also not say how it is created, you know? Rudyard says that he wants to know what happened next with Plum, but then immediately goes, "You won't tell me." Oh well, I don't need to know anyway. Also, you want to see something? Don't worry about answering. I'm gonna show you anyway. This is the single most obvious 2 sentences that show that this story isn't a story. It's just things happening at the force of the writer's hand. 2 times in a row saying that something is meaningless to say the reaction doesn't matter. It's going to push it forward anyway because it's what the writer wants you to see. It is so low effort. The fact that he goes, "I want you to tell me what happened next." Fine, you're not going to? Well, I don't need to know. Why the frick did you ask in the first place? Like, none of this matters. He says that it doesn't matter. The characters in this book say that none of this stuff matters. Then he goes on this whole thing. He is so proud of himself. I'm assuming that's why he tells her, but whatever. He says that he has 6 of these bug girls, and she knows one of them, who is Charity. He just, I think, wants somebody to tell about all of his stuff, even though he has an entire staff that works at his corporation, his secret science lab, that he can brag about his bug sex slaves that he is working on. But he tells her that he has been stuck in a single moment of his entire life, and these bug girls are the outcome to being trapped in that moment in the past. He says that the van moment transformed Charity into a highest place of her being, which she is in now. She is a bug goddess because of what happened in that van. Rudyard then brags about the bug hormones that his teenage girl experiments have and how amazing he is for making this happen, saying that Charity has ascended to being a bug queen, so she has miraculous sex pheromones, which include mind control pheromones because bugs have mind control pheromones. These books are so predictable in their language. This is how he talks about it, quote, "We've been studying QMP for a century and are no closer to understanding how it works. Humans secrete pheromones, yes, in our piss and shit and vaginal walls and glands, but they're a watery reflection of the insect's world. If Six can produce her own version of QMP, imagine, Margaret, being able to make someone do anything that you want from miles away." Not to digress, but this is why stuff like this and stigma play don't mean anything, don't do anything. They rely on brash language and attempts at disgust through extreme examples to shock people as if we live in the 70s. And extreme examples to shock people, but it's nothing in today's writing world, and every edgy person is doing the exact same thing. For me, a story without stakes, cause, effect, without investment into what is happening in the story, the characters in the story making decisions that can have things that they can control and things they can't control and are reacting to and have to adjust to. Without those things, it doesn't matter because nothing the characters do is going to turn out to be anything but whatever the author sprinkles, whatever the writer sprinkles across it at max control. It's just show and tell of the writer's loogie collection with the tiniest of settings tying them together to go from one item to the next. After Rudyard is done bragging about putting bugs down his shirt, no, really, that is what he does, they get back into the car to drive back to the others, and he brags about taking advantage of poor white trash people, while also asserting that Serena is now Plum's slave because the bug girl pheromones are controlling Serena, and that's how Serena got involved with the teacher, and pretty much everything else that happened with Serena. It's not that Margaret decides that she needs to get away because she doesn't. It is now that Margaret decides she needs to get away because she doesn't think that she is helpful to Rudyard anymore and they'll dispose of her soon. Somehow, she is also afraid of doing something stupid that would get them killed all immediately after assuming that she is going to die here anyways. Like, who cares if you're going to die from a stupid decision if you're going to be assassinated or killed by your captor? She steals the controllable fob that he's got on his person because he also, when they were in the vehicle, he showed her this bug girl he was carrying around in a box, basically, because she's like a little head with a little body kind of screwed in around it, and he has her in a box to keep her pheromones in there, and he's like, look at her. He literally is showing her his shit in a box, and he's like, look at her. This is number 5. And so he's got a fob on him. The box is closed in order to protect himself. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. She should be in a containment unit in his lab, not in a freaking box that he carries around to show to a random girl so that he can get hard. Anyway, Plum fights him for the fob, gets tackled by Rudyard, and Harry presses the fob to open the bug cages. Project 5 Bug Girl gets out of the box and attacks Rudyard's henchman, Jameson, as Harry and Margaret get into a car to flee away. Margaret wants to tell the cops about what is happening, and Harry won't go where she wants him to go because he is being controlled by Plum and is taking her to where Plum wants her to go, back to the fruit farm. A brief note on the orchard that they are going to. It is a POS run by a POS man, of course, because everybody sucks. Harry leads Margaret into the shed and tells her to keep going on her own. She approaches a giant cocoon and she puts her arm in before realizing what it is and that it belongs to Plum. Partially, because she is still kind of in it. At least it's a shell of her body. So Plum has shed out of her human skin into her true queen bug form and left her old human body behind, plastered here as a cocoon. Serena is also in the shed in control of Charity and gets Margaret in the car to take her to Charity. I think we were just collecting Serena, honestly, because Harry could have taken her to Charity. Odd here that she's Charity and Serena at the same time, talking in third person, but also going, quote, "Your creator is looking for you." And it's Charity. So she's saying, addressing Serena as Charity, but then also addressing Serena as not Charity. It can't decide how it wants to address these people or what it wants to be. This is also all done because Charity was jealous of the men that Margaret was interacting with, and Margaret, of course, calls her a petty bitch, to which Serena just giggles. There is this obsession with making women fight each other and hate each other in the minds of some that comes across in these books. Margaret is so dumb that she tells Charity that she plans to run when the car stops. Why would you do that? Just shut your mouth and then take your chance when you can take your shot. She remembers a time just before Plum had disappeared where Plum got into the shower with her and got so close and was like groping her and putting hands on her body in private places. And then there were thoughts being put in her head telling her that she sexually wanted Plum, but she fought against them, which made Plum cry and run out because Margaret didn't accept her forced advances. At the golf club and hunting club, because now we are at the country club, it's full of rich people doing something. They're having a party for the missing boys. Serena says that they're going to eat the rich, as the good poor people do every 50 years. I don't really think that's true, but oh well, who cares? This is just trying to do zingers at this point. Or should I say stingers? I'm sorry. Margaret literally has zero response to her best friend saying that she wants to murder a building full of people, but I just don't want to be a part of this. This is a normal 17, 18-year-old girl, and she has zero response to her friend being a monster that wants to murder people. She's like, I'm going to go home, and I'll read about the massacre in the news tomorrow. Does this book realize that there is no horror in literally having everyone be nonchalant about the terrible things that are happening? There is no fear here. It's just a bug power fantasy, and it relies on being weird and gross and random to make horror. I'm sorry, but as I'm writing this, I legitimately feel like my life is worse for having read this stupid book, and I'm not even 75% of the way through. I still have to suffer through many more pages, or I had to when I was writing this. Serena tells Margaret that if she comes in, she can save 1 to 2 people of her choosing, so maybe there will be people there that she wants to save. I guess this is enough to get Margaret to go inside. Margaret tries to help first mean girl Miranda, who is there, but she won't listen and just calls Margaret gross. She sees the fired, disgraced English teacher, Mr. Foster, and he is also the teacher that encouraged her and helped her submit an application to university that she got into, and she decides that she's going to help him because of that. When she's dragging him out of the ballroom, the guy starts crying about how mommy wouldn't want this for him, and everyone is gathered at this place to mourn the missing boys. A bug flies into the room during this slideshow memorial that is going on. Rudyard is also now at the rich person event, covered in blood and pushing through people because he was summoned here by Charity saying, hey, this is where I am, or rather Serena telling him that this is where Charity was. And despite his knowing how powerful these creatures are, because he made them, he's seen them rip people apart. He literally just came from one ripping apart his other guy. He just ran straight into this place with literally zero plan on how to recapture her. He was wearing a hazmat suit when he first met Margaret and Harry in the basement where he thought perhaps they could run into these bugs. And instead, he just runs straight into this place where the queen bee is. Maybe he came in naked. Maybe he had his hard-on out because he ran in straight to just try to stick it in her, because that's what it is all for. So maybe I've got it all wrong since it didn't describe his raging boner, but whatever. What he does when he gets inside is applaud how good his subject is, saying that he wants to rescue her. Perhaps she is fertile, he says, after just ranting about how fertile she is and the age. Like, he literally was in the car with Margaret going, look how fertile she is. She can have babies. This is amazing. And now he's like, I wonder if she's fertile. This book does not remember. Maybe. It takes 2 seconds. Not 2 seconds, but, you know, it takes one revision to go through. One edit to go through. And see your own things that don't make sense. That are forgotten. Whatever. The rest of this section, because it's the second part still, is just mayhem and bug violence in the country club. It is chapter after chapter after chapter, and it includes a return of the missing boys, Will and Chad and Alan, and they have been taken over by Plum's power and also are attacking people. Plum made it so that Margaret couldn't leave because she wanted Margaret to witness everything that is happening. Margaret is actually just inside of the kitchen in the country club and is watching outside of the porthole window in the door and also has the door locked so the bugs can't get in. But I'm usually aware that most kitchens have swinging doors that don't lock like normal doors because, you know, people going in and out with orders, it would kind of not be helpful for delivering food if you had normal locking doors, but somehow this kitchen has doors that she can lock against the bugs. As we get into part 3 of this book, and there's 4 parts actually, not 3, but as we get into it, Margaret is still inside of the yacht club, and there's more describing bug violence and birth and violence and birth and birth out of human bodies and birth and violence and gore. Police show up and enter, and they get destroyed by the bugs immediately, too, because nobody is taking any special precautions in any of this. It's just a bug destroyer flick at this point. Margaret is just hanging out in all of this behind a door separated from the carnage and has nothing to say or react to any of this going on, and she isn't in any danger and doesn't care about anyone dying either. She's just, there's no reaction. It's just there to describe it. The whole last third of this novel is just describing the bugs taking over the country club. Emergency support can't get in to take care of any of it, and Margaret is watching it all on the news and on Twitter, and it becomes internationally discussed. She is also unable to send out anything on her phone because there is some block from, I don't know, the bug's nest where she can receive but she can't send out. And if I didn't mention it already, Rudyard is dead by his own monster because he ran in, dick out, and unprepared for the nailing his queen would give him. Meanwhile, Margaret at times pretends that she is in any danger of the wasps when she knows that she isn't, because Plum has repeatedly said that she wants Margaret to witness what she has done so that she can write about it later. Still, Margaret pretends that if she falls asleep, the bugs might come in to attack her, which I get the paranoia, but I just don't buy it in the story, especially when Margaret has almost zero interaction, zero response to anything happening for the majority of the book. And a lot of the last third of this is also just through tweets of talking conspiracies, because that's how it is deciding to get the exposition out about Project Athena through an account called Project Athena Truth, which is just suddenly deciding to drop a bunch of information, probably because Rudyard is dead and the Bug Queen is out, but it's story-wise, it's lazy and nonsensical. Somehow, despite the intensity of what is happening in the country club, there is absolutely zero tension in this book. With the Project Athena account, government finds Rudyard's lab and breaks into it to get more information about what it was he was doing all this time. Now the rest of the story is news reporting. Honestly, the way this is going, it just further proves to me that this book is just showing stuff to the reader. Queen Plum kills Harry after he urged Margaret to say I love you, and she complied, even though she's not really sure she feels that way. Margaret maims herself, escaping the hive because she's like climbing through stuff and it's like blood and guts and stuff is ripping off her as she gets through the vents. Even though she was never in any danger. I think it mentioned her ear ripping off. It's just being more gory to like describe her more. And then when she gets out, the cops are all pointing guns at her because they're sussy of her, as you imagine. And one of the bug monsters comes out and Margaret's like, oh, he's not gonna hurt me. All of this time, it's been the same thing. He's not gonna hurt you. And this bug specifically happens to be a version of Alan, you know, the kid with the handcuffs. Part 4 has monologue exposition dumping, talking about everything that has happened in the town to applaud itself on its grand human tragedy, but it is also just page filler because it starts with saying that you won't find answers here, and also saying, hey, I don't know what actually happened during parts of this, but let me talk to you about it anyway, for everything that I didn't get in the pages earlier naturally. So we got to monologue it here at the end to just kind of dump it on, but also don't trust this narrator. He tells you himself, don't trust him. After all of this, there are now tours through the area, through the town. Charity and Margaret have been deified, though mostly Charity Margaret is pretty much hated by everyone as the one who is determined to have done this to Charity by not accepting her feelings. And people are collecting garbage that the two girls have touched so that they can lick the merchandise. The book complains again how no one cares when poor people go missing, but if you're well off and attractive, they care. And yet this country, this city, has made deities of Charity and sort of Margaret. Now asking why Rudyard would even make bug queens? Well, there is a story that there was a prostitute Rudyard hired to put on sickles and bug breastplates and have sex with him while covered in goo. And so now the thought that he did this is all for the chance that he might be able to have sex with a giant bug. That's where it wanted to end, on a joke, honestly. This whole thing was a joke. It's not horror. The nest at the country club is now a tourist trap where they sell merchandise and shirts with slogans on it about how girls are going to eat you if you fuck around and find out. Well, there are also bugs still there, and there are also 24/7 hour feeds, but there is no mind control going on, and there is no real threat to whatever was still in there. Though the assumption is more that there's no mind control, when the whole fact that the hive is doing this sales stuff could be mind control, and that the queen could have set up this entire town to just be her orbiters and worshippers for her to show her power. Honestly, that's a possibility, especially because nobody in the town is trying to put an end to the danger nest for science, and it's all just open, which opens more people up to getting infected to becoming slaves to the queen. Meanwhile, people love and cherish Charity as a tragic person and hate Margaret as the person who did this to her because she was going to college. She's a bad friend, they say, so now everyone hates her. Hate Rudyard, bro. It's so dumb. The people are so obsessed with Chariot that I must assume that there's some mind control going on. Quote, Chariot Atwater's whereabouts are known, however, and with a firm degree of surety. Yet, while her physical body exists somewhere under St. Catherine's Golf and Hunt Club, her spirit, which she's come to represent for millions, is unshackled, atomized into the atmosphere. She no longer is a person. Genetically, there is an argument that she never was. She has now ascended to the realm of an ideal, and ideals function best without the baggage of personhood. People are always letting you down. People are made of fleshy, failing stuff. Ideals are impregnable. A few weeks after Project Athena entered the public consciousness, Greta Thunberg addressed the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change wearing a plain white tee for Free Charity Atwater written in black Sharpie. Literally, what is there to free when she is not a person and has no body and is not being held captive by anyone? She is literally her own queen and the queen of all of these bugs. Who the frick is she saying free from this? Unless you're just trying to be like, Greta Thunberg is an idiot for whatever this is. Why was this comment even necessary in this book? It is so outlandish. It has nothing to do with anything. And then Charity is heralded as some rebellious whatever who went out revenging against her wealthy makers and also just adults as a whole. If this doesn't result in a teenage suicide cult to avoid becoming adults, then I will be surprised, because a bunch of people are now like, adults suck. Yeah, Charity, kill them all. Also, she killed a bunch of normal kids in her class too out of jealousy, but I guess they don't really talk about that because they can all just get behind the killing of adults. And that's about it. Charity is a wasp queen, goddess of rebellion and about killing adults. Margaret is hiding and applying for college to be a writer and wrote about Charity in her application. And in this application story, nonfiction thing that she wrote, she has sex with Bug Charity. I can only assume this is through Charity's mind control, as the last time this nearly happened, it was also Charity's mind control, and now she is even more powerful than she was before. In the epilogue, there is a random letter from a military guy who was sent into the nest to look for survivors and is writing to Margaret without knowing if his letter will even reach her. He says that going inside was no different than experiencing colonization, a population built on the graves of others, and he says that while he was in there, he heard his daughter's voice down in the deep of the spider webs saying, "She's real." Like, I'm real, I'm real, I'm real, I'm real, I'm real. And that's it. I don't know what the point of this letter was. It didn't really do anything, except, again, trying to be creepy, but it had no relation to anything. We didn't see this girl. We don't have any relation to this guy either. Like, the story needed to end before. So, genre/audience. I don't know if I would call this extreme horror, but it feels tangentially related from the style of writing. You got the bugs, you got the same kind of laissez-faire humor interjected that kind of makes me think of Gretchen Felker Martin. It also has references to pee and testicles and just tries to be disgusting, and all of those things feel like a trademark to the genre at this point, to where it's just boring. Here's an example, quote, "As he pulled Harry's Geo into the graveled bulb bordering a grape field, I kept trying to figure out who this guy, Rudy, reminded me of. Then it hit me. Casey Hogarth. Nobody had seen Casey in years, thank God, but back in elementary school, he used to moon around the fringe of the schoolyard eating bugs. He didn't even try to make much of a secret of it. I think Casey liked people watching as he stuffed whatever he'd found under the rock garden into his mouth. Sightless beetles, earwigs, and the pupating cicadas that he'd dig from the turf and mash up between his teeth as if they were flabbing grains of rice. Moonbugs. Wasn't that what Casey called them? Moonbugs taste dandy, yummy as candy. Adults or kids, he creeped out everybody. Our teacher, Miss Fairchild, cringed when she spotted brown bites, the feelers and legs of insects in the cracks of Casey's teeth. I sat in front of Casey in Miss Fairchild's class. His piebald eyes rested on the back of my neck. I took to wearing my hair down. The rumor went that when Casey was 12, he crushed 3 of his mother's sleeping pills into his stepsister's Coca-Cola, and when she fell asleep, Casey pulled her panties down, snipped off a hatch of pubic hair, and ate it. After that incident, Casey got sent someplace up north. Nobody heard from him again. It's just like nonstop anecdotes and stories of stuff like this where people try to be gross in one way or another, and that's basically the majority of the story if it's not just violence and bugs. Hook. This book opens with Margaret, who has gone from trailer park to McMansion, receiving a brand new iPhone in the mail and thinking that she needs to hide it. Why? I'm not really sure. It's not like she and her family don't have the money to be speedy. And it's not like her parents have any say in her life because, I mean, this is only one day, but we don't even see her leaving the house. Like, see them when she is leaving the house. So we don't really know how involved they are, but they don't really seem all that involved if she's been out of school for a month. She's getting messages that make her think that her friend who went missing a month ago is back somehow or has actually not died, and she follows those messages telling her to visit school if she wants to know what happened, under the belief that her friend is either doing a 13's Reason Why thing or she faked her suicide. Meanwhile, we end up with this super rich person drilling in the earth somewhere and unleashing the wrath of an ant-pocalypse, and also coming in a helicopter to Margaret's neighborhood for an experiment of some kind. It says that this is about discovering Charity's secret, but we've also actually got something bigger going on that is so over the top, and it's not just interpersonal story, as the book blurb would suggest that this is about discovering Charity's secret that Charity didn't even know until she awakened. So it's not like she was hiding it on purpose, theoretically. It also feels like it's trying too hard and is reaching for things it's seen elsewhere, just like copying ideas. You can do that in an inspiration kind of way, but this just didn't do it for me in a good way. It also gives me this feeling that what happens doesn't matter and it's going to go nowhere. So even early on in this book, when I was at about 15-18% doing this, the way that it was structured made me feel like whatever was going to happen in the book was not going to build, that everything we were going to see was just going to be randomly chosen, and that is pretty much what we got. Language/writing. The sort of writing in this genre just kind of annoys me because of the way that it is brash. It's overwritten and it's trying to be, it's overwritten and it's trying too hard to be visceral. Quote, fear? What was there to be scared of? The sun was shining and I was in my home. Still, the nightmare kept cycling in my underbrain. Chad Dearborn and Will Stinson resembling a knot of mushy pool noodles as they zephyred out of that hole. What even is an underbrain? Not only that, but the writing in this is very clunky and forced to get out information. Quote, I'd come to accept that my friend, Plum, our nicknames sprang from the roads that we'd grown up on, Cherry Close and Plum Lane, were gone. God, I'd imagined her dead, her body unraveled in a field picked at by crows. I couldn't stop the image from popping into my head, the equivalent of those shitty McAfee ads. Like, you're doing something and recalling something, but in the middle of your monologue, you just interject answers to questions that nobody asked. We don't really care why they're cherry or plum right now, since this is just the beginning of the book when it's introducing this, and we don't really need to know in this situation, especially since this is a first-person account. We can just hear them talking as they would talk to one another instead of going back and forth between Charity and Plum. And then later, when Rudyard comes in and he goes, why the frick do you call her Plum? She could go, well, that was the nickname that we had for one another because of where we grew up. Bam. Then you got the difference between Plum and Cherry, and then or Plum and Charity. And then you could also have the confusion and the discussion of a confusion with Rudyard when they didn't quite know if they were talking about the same person. Like, it adds complications and it's great. When you actually consider how things are limited without telling people and you just let people act natural, it's interesting how interactions change. Going to the world building, descriptions were try hard, and reading to either elicit a reaction by being gross or trying to be overly visceral to the point of not making sense, like punching hands through one's hair, and sweat was dumping out of me. Harry's Adam's apple also punched out of his throat. Characters. I'd like to say that random lore slash background drops are not character building, especially not early on. I mean, in this particular, I'm not going to make any rules, but I'm evaluating this book specifically. It doesn't show character or force readers to care about your characters just to drop exposition at the very beginning. It's just clunky and slows the story down from what should be happening, which is introducing us to who the characters are and what they're doing at the get-go of the story. So all of the random comments this made at the beginning to flashbacks and talk of childhood weren't necessary to saying that Plum had disappeared a month ago, which got pushed back a little bit because of the exposition dumping, and they also fell apart as friends because Margaret got rich and moved out to a different neighborhood and stopped talking to Plum, which we don't even really have a timeline for when that happened, but it was before Margaret applied to college, but also that was recent enough that she blames it for making Charity angry. Like, we don't really have a timeline of this friendship. Characters overall don't really matter, but let me tell you that characters overall don't really matter. Instead, Margaret feels like a vehicle for readers to ride in, and the stories are just more shows like you're riding in It's a Small World After All that's deliberately trying to make you sick. That's it. Who any of these people are doesn't matter. The decisions they make don't matter. And you also could have actually had a story here, not only about not necessarily knowing somebody because they don't even necessarily know themselves, but also a loss of autonomy or a lack of autonomy, or how, poor people next to these rich people, super rich people, don't have any autonomy at all, and it's all controlled by these hyper rich people that have no accountability and are driven by their sick fetishes and their god complexes. Like, you could have worked this into the actual story that's here, but it's not. Instead, it's just this visual where none of this matters, and the autonomy isn't actually made, or the lack of autonomy isn't actually made part of this story, which also could have included, how Rudyard, even though Margaret had become part of the upper class, was not actually considered it and was still pulled back down as somebody at the same level as Charity. Also, we got no update on Margaret's parents after she disappeared into this whole thing. So again, this goes back to what I said earlier about her parents. Harry is also basically non-existent and just drives around Margaret and save her from herself when she makes stupid decisions that shouldn't even have been made. I don't know why he's even here other than to give Plum somebody to be super jealous of because Margaret was interested in somebody else. Plot. A rich guy uses poor people to make human bug queen girls, is obsessed, teen girls too, is obsessed with seeing his sister eaten by ants when he was 10 years old and uses zero precautions when dealing with this, so he gets eaten up by his own creation. Bug girls take over the country club to kill the rich and then some, and the plot needs so much help that the writer seems to reach in, wearing various costumes to tell the main characters what to do at all times, including as a figment of a TV show character, because freaking, we have Meadow at the beginning of the book. Did the character change names? That's also a question I have, because the prologue says Meadow and then has a Tony Soprano thing, and they're also locked in a building as wasps are attacking stuff. And then you have the rest of the book where it is Margaret and she has a Tony Soprano. So like, is the prologue supposed to also be Margaret, and was there a name change at some point? I'm not entirely sure. If this is considered good, I get why no one notices when Grady Hendrick has donned on Grandma Ghost outfit to point Patty in the direction of where she needed to go in the Vampire Book Club. It's the most lazy writing to me. It's characters not being active in their own stories and not problem solving and not reading the situation, the scenario that they're in to solve what they need to do next, or having choices of their own. It's just a hand on the back pushing and a lips in the ear whispering. Meanwhile, why does this rich guy do this? What's his plan? There isn't one, because this book isn't about a cascade of events made by choices and watching things happen. It's just a writer having a situation to write as many descriptions of bug births and deaths and pheromones of teenagers as possible to get to you. That's all. Themes/other. I think this is a good summary of what this book is. Quote, there was all this TLC reality show Plum and I used to watch, My Strange Addiction. It followed subjects whose compulsions ranged from odd, a dude who ate the stuffing out of couch cushions, to deadly. The one girl mixed toilet cleaner powder and water into a green paste, eating it with a Royal Doulton spoon. You could see the spoon was all eaten through, and it made you wonder what that girl's insides looked like. A doctor told her that if she didn't stop, she'd die. Your stomach lining is obliterated. That's the word the doctor used. His degree held a simple certainty, same way you tell a child the sun is hot. But at the end of the episode, the camera snuck up next to the girl, shoveling Ajax stew into her mouth, crouched in the bathtub with the shower curtain pulled shut, sobbing. This came back to me as my foot touched the first stair leading down to the furnace. The unhealthy, even lethal things that we humans do. So what do I mean by this is a good summary of the book? It's a sensationalized show where nothing matters. It's just putting stuff on to shock and appall readers, including the references that it makes just exist to get reactions. It's the sort of thing that I hate, and trying to be shocking for shocking's sake isn't a story or entertainment to me. I know that it's something for other people, but it isn't for me. Writing a story to mistreat and torture people, or to be gross, as this attempts to with piss and shit and cannibalism and incest because you want to get a reaction out of people, is just too try-hard and pointless. And also, it's pretty cheap. What pulls me into a story is earnesty of approaching the people in it, of wanting to tell true stories as true as possible for the characters in them, and sincerity of those people. Not treating them like tools. And that's what I dislike most about this type of writing style, and this genre. Overall, this book doesn't stand out to me. In closing, it pretty much reminds me of all of the other books that are written like this, including Stigma Play, which I have read over the summer. And it was also a shock value book, with each scene existing only to do something dirty to try and get a reaction. That's why it's boring. Like watching porn or snuff for the plot. And it picks what it thinks is the most deprived thing, or what's going to get people uncomfortable, like bugs and incest, and leans into it. It's what all of these books do, and you can tell by the cadence of how it's written that that's what it's going to be, even from the start, which is kind of what I clocked it as, and it did turn out as that. And as a complete side note, I hate the term meat bag to refer to humans unironically. Like, whatever for Bender in Futurama because he's a robot and he's a racist and it's whatever. But if you're going to use it in a story like this, where you've got an 18-year-old girl, a 17-year-old girl who's theoretically a normal girl, just goes to school, whatever, and then she drops the word meatbag while talking about other humans, all that comes through is it speaks of the misanthropy of the writing, if it is not within the character bounds to be that way, which this book to me feels very misanthropic because it just hates people. I mean, look at how it treats people the whole way through. And there are certain people that I can get calling somebody meatbag. I can assume Rudyard would call people meatbags. I could even see cops calling people meatbags. But this teenage girl doing it, I couldn't get. And when you put it in a story like this and have somebody like the narrator talk about it like that, who are not Patrick Bateman, we're not following people like Patrick Bateman, there is just so little to care for in a book that doesn't show any value in evaluating how people think and how people act, especially strange people, especially, violent people like are in this book. And it also shows there is nothing of value lost going into this. There's no value put into this because it doesn't believe that there is any worth in human life to the point that it casually insults all humanity. This sort of nihilism and hatred doesn't do anything for me, and I'm really not interested in reading it, but it is so common that it shows up in everything. It just reads like a bratty child with a superiority complex at the end of the day, and this, you can write a story that says something with that complexity and with nihilism, but this didn't do it for me. It's like, again, it feels like it was trying to do too much, like just be a horror flick, but also try to be deeper. But also when you're writing this type of horror flick, you're just making everybody pointless because you really don't care. I don't know. This book was obviously just not for me. That's all I've got to say. So, have you read this book? Will you read this book? With all that said, those are my thoughts on Nick Cutter's The Queen. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
To my children, Tommy, Ike, and Annabelle, if you forget everything else I ever said in the lifetime we shared together, I need you to remember 3 things. 1. Minimize violence done to and by women. As givers of life, it's against their nature, God's design, to do harm, and every act of violence done to them is meant to break their souls, turning what should be a giver of hope into a black widow. A woman who destroys the life and the mercy of her care for no other reason but the corruption of her own self. It is only when you come across these kinds of women that you should put them down, for they are no better than the men who tarnished them. However, take no glee in what must be done. Finding any life so far gone, a black hole is where someone's heart should be, leaves only one solution: the mercy of death, and it's a tragedy when it happens. Make no mistake, a woman's love is the most powerful thing on this earth. It can start wars, end them, and change the devil himself into someone God sees worthy of giving a second chance. She don't owe this love to anyone, but she do carry it around with her so long as she's living. That is why the devil will do everything he can to pervert women's nature and destroy their innocence. Of every crime you can commit during your lifetime, be it out of daring or necessity, for every defiance you may act out against God, government, or man, avoid harming the innocent. For the day that we become bloodthirsty beasts where love don't exist anymore is the day hell on earth has come. And as bad as it may seem at times nowadays, we ain't there yet. 2. Everything you do in your life will create consequences, both seen and unseen, extending further than you can imagine. Nothing you do exists solely within your arm's reach. Think about every decision you make, every action you take, because you won't know how long your choices will stalk you, be them destructions or blessings, rumors or history been made. The truth of the matter is, your life will be controlled not by the truth of what you've done, but by the way others carry on about you. And the thoughts of others are more real in the long term than what you know to be true. It won't stop affecting you just because it ain't real, and no matter the life you've lived, most men can't outrun what's written in them in ink. It ain't hopeless though. Be firm in knowing who you are outside of the noise, and live beyond the means of the news of the day. 3. There ain't anything stronger than a family you build for yourself. What you put together is worth fighting for. Protect your loved ones with your life, and they'll give theirs in return. Family ain't defined by blood, understand that. And for as strong as the bonds of your family are, know that you'll find just as much passion in the people who hate you. While you'll risk your life for those you care about, those who find your existence to be an insult to theirs will risk themselves to put an end to their affliction. As cruel as it may seem, a man who hates you will stop at nothing until one of you is dead. It's a mistake to believe anything different. Don't let you be the ones taken from, be it by outlaw lawmen or by someone in between. The only one who'll be looking out for you is you and your kin. Maybe there's another way to be, but in all my years I've seen the worst of man, I ain't found another way around man's desire to conquer against all else. There ain't a changing of that mind, and sometimes I believe there ain't the ability for man to change at all, least of all through lead or legislation. I ain't claiming to be right about nothing. On many things, I don't want to be right. But what I do want is for my kids to live a better life than the one I did and avoid the mistakes that I made while finding the truth and purpose in what matter more than gold in this country. It's my hope that by sharing the things I learned that my kids will be better than their old man ever was, and that what I done isn't what people remember me for, but who y'all are going to become. That'll be the legend of Bill Cassidy.